Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Bradler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
I think that felt right. I think it felt right to bring that back tonight. Were you surprised? We didn't talk about it. I didn't say I was going to do it. It just felt right in the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, perfect time to bring it back. Got back to football. Michigan finally had a big game on the plate, something that people could point to and say, look, there's a legitimate opponent, beat them on the road pretty convincingly. I know that a lot of people pointed to the score and said, well, how dominant was it? I think if you're there and watched it, you understand how dominant it was and how they went about their business. So yeah, it feels like a good time to bring that song back. It's good to hear it.
It was almost like a hunting animal playing with its food at times.
Yeah.
We just do this.
Dare I say a boa constrictor?
A sumo wrestler leaning on a guy till he just stops.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing we've said a lot. Yeah, I mean, okay, so you do look at the final score. All right, 24-15. It wasn't quite that close. Obviously, Penn State did get a late score. I wouldn't call it garbage time score. It wasn't like, Michigan was up 30 and all the backups were in. I mean, Chris, you were down on the field and I was up in the box, so obviously we didn't really have a lot of chance to talk about the immediate fallout of the game or how we were feeling. There was like a small little moment where I was like, there's kind of like a lot of time left in the game, like a little bit. In Penn State, if they somehow do manage to get this 2-point conversion or, recover an onside kick or whatever, like, we're not under a minute here. Like that's kind of where I think there was 3 minutes and some change left. But you're right. I mean, I never felt like Michigan was going to lose the game, but I felt like, all right, like there's a little bit of a chance here where Penn State might and do something and put themselves back into it. That didn't happen, but I don't know. I didn't get a chance to really talk about that with you. Like what was the vibe down on the field? I mean, I know I texted you early on and I was like, what's it like down there? And you were like, loud. And then obviously that changed a bit and you saw people leaving in droves. But towards the end there was a moment where Penn State could have made it a little bit interesting down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that's what, I'm not sure if I talked about it on the Friday game or on the Friday show, but that was one of the things that I think I was looking forward to. And that I think, in some way that a lot of people, whether you're a Michigan fan or not, you were looking forward to was to see how Michigan would respond in a tough environment. If it was a close game, if there was a chance that, they were facing an opponent that could beat them and things were tight late in the game. And yeah, certainly to start it out. I mean, that, I've been to Beaver Stadium before up in the press box. So this is my first time being down on the field and just getting a sense of how loud it can be, early on when the crowd is into it. Shout out to those fans. And again, that stadium, it's just an incredible environment to go. If you're a college football fan in general, just an incredible place to go watch a football game. But yeah, there was a small sliver of kind of maybe like, oh shit, here we go. And I know that Penn State drove down the field early on, looked like they might score an early touchdown. The Michigan defense stepped up in a big way, held them to a field goal right out of the gate. I think that was a huge point in the game, a big statement there on that first drive. And then, yeah, I know that the score was relatively close, even late in the game, but it just always felt like Michigan was in complete control. I mean, I have the notes here in front of me. They ran 54 offensive plays and 46 of them were running plays. It's just, that's why I came away saying that was a complete dominant win. I didn't realize, I think because I get so lost in the camera, like I was trying to get pictures of JJ McCarthy throwing the ball and every play at some point just started to look the same. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then after the game, come to find out that they run the ball 30 straight times. And I think the last run came midway through the second quarter. So, yeah, just a complete dominant performance from Michigan and a very, very impressive road win against a top 10 opponent. And I can already see it. I can already hear it today. Now we're moving the goalposts again. Well, how good is Penn State? Drew Allen wasn't that good. Yada, yada, yada. All the expected bullshit. That was an impressive win by Michigan on Saturday.
I'm glad you brought up the whole, some of the early stances that Michigan's defense had. In my 3 up, 3 down, I didn't focus on any down. It was a big day. It was a big win. It was a huge road win. No Harbaugh, Sharon Moore running the show. The way that they ran the ball, which I put up. So Penn State fires their offensive coordinator after the game, right? And I say, well, maybe they should take a look at Manny Diaz. He's talking shit before the game, and then he gets punked for 30 runs in a row. And so many Penn State fans jumped in my mentions and were like, "Really? The defense owned it. They did exactly." I'm like, did Michigan run the ball 30 times in a row and win the game, or was I watching something? No, not every run
was afraid to throw it. They couldn't rely on McCarthy to win the game.
They didn't need to do anything other than turn in hand.
I mean, talk about talking about the advantage that comes with knowing what a team is going to do on the other side. Penn State at some point pretty early on knew that Michigan was going to run it every fucking time, and it didn't seem to really change the outcome.
Yes, no, not every run went for 30 yards. Not every run was a touchdown, but Michigan did exactly what they wanted to do the whole second half. And Penn State fans who don't see that or view that as something else, I don't know what to tell you.
It's like people who watch a boxing match and you think that every punch thrown needs to be a knockout uppercut type big punch.
Right.
Like those body blows count. Like that all counts towards the momentum and the trajectory of the game. And I think a lot of fans, some of the rival fans look at that and they were like, some of those runs didn't even go for first downs. Michigan had to punt it away. It's like, you're missing the overall point. Michigan decided it wasn't because of any limitations to JJ McCarthy. He was 7 of 8. He just didn't need to throw the damn ball. Michigan didn't need to do anything outside of what they did in order to win convincingly by 2 scores. And so to try to somehow minimize that as a weakness of Michigan or something that Michigan wasn't able to do from the passing game, like anytime, and let's not forget, Penn State had the number 1 rush defense in the country. And Michigan went into their building and said, okay, we'll just run it every single time. We'll see how it works out. And it turns out Michigan won. Right.
That's like I said, I understand. Somebody pulled up the drive chart and it was like punt, field goal, punt. I'm like, you're not listening. They ran the ball 30 times in a row. You want to steal a sign? They were basically holding a giant one up that said, we are running the ball. And they did it for the whole second half and got a win. Now, sure, that does fall back on Penn State's offense a lot because every time Michigan gave them the ball back, Michigan knew they were going to be getting it right back in a couple minutes. I understand that. But the fact that the defense really couldn't make a play, couldn't make Michigan come out of what they wanted to do, like, I don't know. It was impressive to win a game.
Up 140 plus yards to Blake Corum, 2 touchdowns.
I was just going to say, okay, you want to show me that drive chart?
Hey.
Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum had 3 rushing touchdowns total and ran for over 200. How's that for a drive chart? Like, Were you not watching? I don't understand. And they ran it 30 times in a row and didn't need to come out of anything or do anything weird the whole game. And one thing, though, I will give some credit where credit is due to Penn State. They've got some pass rushers on that team, and it was a problem early. Carson Barnhart got beat like he stole something multiple times. In fact, my very first prediction was that JJ would not be sacked. Well, it happened on like the second or third play of the game. So, I understand their pass rush was locked in, but Michigan never really even tried to counter it. They didn't put a back over there to chip. They didn't put an extra jumbo tight end. They moved the pocket a couple of times, let JJ get outside on his 1 or 2 of his 7 completions. And they did work in some formational stuff where there were a couple tight ends bunched. Like, I think Bredesen and Barner were over there on the same side as Barnhart at one point. They did a couple of things, but then at some point they just said, you know what, fuck it. Let's just run it all day and watch what happens. And they got to win. I don't know. It was pretty dominant in my opinion. And back to your original point, I wanted to put up Blue Heart Super Chat real quick. Just a comment. Yeah, they knew it was coming and couldn't stop it. I mean, that's demoralizing to a defense. I guess if you consider, making them punt after a first down or two when they've taken 8 minutes off the clock, a win. I think Michigan was fine with that, though. That's what they were playing to. Not the most exciting, but it worked.
I mean, but we've talked about that with Michigan
a million times.
And that's where I think when you hear things like that, those are people that are looking at stat sheets. Those are people that really haven't watched Michigan play football. It's not, I've talked about this a number of times. It's not an explosive brand of football. You turn off the Wolverines after they get another win on the year, and you look around elsewhere around college football. You turn on an SEC game, and you see points and airing it out and air raid types. Like, that's just not what Michigan does. Yeah. If you watch the way that Michigan's played all season, what they did on Saturday, quite honestly, that was probably the most impressive performance that I've seen from them this year, because of what they did and the decision that they made with Sharon Moore leading the way, which is, we are going to run it every single time. And to go into Beaver Stadium and to do that and to come out with a 2-score win, to try to minimize that as, well, Michigan had to punt it away here. They knew they could, because they knew Penn State's offense couldn't do anything against the Michigan defense. And then that to me was a solid game plan, knowing who you are, sticking to it. And let's be honest, like, I think JJ's dealing with a little something. I saw him limping around a little bit. That ankle seems to have been an issue. We heard him bring it up early on in the season about his ankle, needing it to get some extra rest. Can't remember. Maybe it was Indiana. Saw him limping over to the sideline a little bit, and Jim Harbaugh seeming a little bit concerned. Saw that again in Happy Valley. I think he's got something going on with the ankle. But again, if you're Michigan, you can say, doesn't matter. He can just throw it 8 times. That's cool. We'll just run it with Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards.
Well, he was limping. He was limping hard towards the end of the Penn State game. He got tackled and kind of rolled up weird on one of his runs and came up pretty lame, and then was still limping on the next series. But it wasn't
an ongoing thing for weeks now with JJ McCarthy, dating back to even before the bye week.
Yeah, love. No Stallions, no. I'm going to add a word. No Stallions, no Harbaugh. We'll steal your signs, manhood, dignity, and yo bitch. Penn State, what's up? No, I just. I think I got like 90 replies on the tweet, and it was all Penn State people just talking shit like they won. I was like, wait a minute. Do you get points for punts? I'm concerned here. Anyway, I thought the offensive game plan, while a little bit monotonous, a little bit boring to watch, obviously worked to perfection. They got the dub. And then the defense, Chris, you made a point of it, and that was one of the things I brought up in my 3-up, was just the defensive unit as a whole. You mentioned bending but not breaking late in the first quarter. First and goal from the 3 Penn State had. They had to kick a field goal. Actually, the very first series of the game was a super fast 3-and-out, so it started even before that. First possession on the second half when Drew Aller was being utilized in the run game, and it was working pretty well. Rayshawn Benny comes in and gets a punch out. Makari Page recovers a fumble. Momentum immediately thwarted and switched back over to Michigan. And then just kind of all throughout the day, making a key play here, a big stop here, forcing a punt, getting a hand on a ball, tipping a pass. Like, they just made key play after key play. Kenneth Grant's hustle play, I mean, that seemed to rejuvenate the defense. They talked about that with him today at the press conference. And I mean, he was so they brought Cornelius Johnson up first and asked him about how fast Kenneth was, and there was kind of some funny, back and forth. And then Kenneth Grant, dude, he was all smiles. Like, he was smiling ear to ear when he got up to the podium, because he knew they were going to ask about his speed. And dude, 350-pounders don't get asked about their speed very much. And he had like 8 questions about his wheels.
It's terrifying that a man that size can run that fast. I mean, if you really think about what he did, that's a scary thought.
Hearing him talk about it was so funny too. He's like, from my POV, I was just making a tackle. I didn't even know I was running fast. That's like, he's not used to like 25-yard bursts down the field. Probably.
I did see people afterwards were asking, can we get KG in some short yardage situations? Yes. And I think Sharon Moore even retweeted it with like a thinking emoji, as if it may be a possibility in the future. God damn it, put him on offense, put him in short yardage. Would love to see 78 get the ball.
They asked him about it at the presser, has there actually been any discussion? And he said, well, we joked about it. I don't think he's very serious, though. And then they're like, would you like to do it? He was like, hell yeah, I would like to do it. Like, yes, I want to do it. But I mean, I don't know if we haven't seen the best kick returner in the world yet. I don't know if we're going to see KG on offense. So anyway, but that play was incredible.
We may see head coach Sharon Moore for the remainder of the regular season. So we'll get into that a little bit.
We may see that. So no, a lot of things to hang your hat on if you're Michigan's defense. The offense, I mean, it was as one-dimensional as it's ever been. I mean, like that was service academy like. Yeah, like Army, Navy, Air Force throw the ball more than that in a half. It was wild to watch.
I mean, I think the response that you saw from the outside to Michigan's performance was, I mean, let's be honest, outside of Michigan fans and people polling for this team, everybody was waiting for Michigan to drop that game.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you get the Harbaugh suspension on the plane less than 24 hours before the game starts. You're in Beaver Stadium. It's the whole narrative the entire season has been, you haven't played anybody. Wait till you play a ranked team. Wake me up when you play a ranked team. And then Michigan just goes out and does what it does. And of course, the goalposts move. Well, that ranked team wasn't that good. Drew Aller isn't very good. And on and on and on. And so I think it's become very apparent that it doesn't matter what Michigan does. From the outside, the perception is the goalposts will continue to move. People are going to root against this team for the remainder of the way. And I think that was part of, you know, at the press conference today, Jim Harbaugh saying this is America's team. I think he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was saying. These guys are rallying around each other. They're embracing the whole deal. And it certainly didn't sit well with Paul Feinbaum. I can tell you that.
I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I can't do it.
What is it?
This is what Jim Harbaugh is doing right now. I can't do it. It's not fair to Harbaugh, but this is what it reminded me of, and you just brought it up. It reminds me of Mark D'Antonio somehow managing to turn shit into a chip that seemed to work week after week after week for that Michigan State team during their heyday. Every week he was like, and then players bought in and they used it and they won a lot of games. Jim Harbaugh's never really had to do that before, and I think this is more valid than anything that D'Antonio ever came up with.
I mean, I was going to say, like, it felt like to me, D'Antonio had to manufacture a lot of what he was selling to the team. This group of players, I don't think there is a team in the country that has faced more adversity than this Michigan football team this year. And you look at where it started with, you know, Jim Harbaugh missing the first 3 games of the season due to suspension. Then he comes back. They start the Big Ten schedule. They look really good. And now potentially going to miss him for another 3. I mean, you're talking about half of the regular season being without your coach, being in the national spotlight for weeks on end, people calling you cheaters, people questioning every single accomplishment you've had over the last 2 years. I think the chip that they're carrying on their shoulder, Mark D'Antonio was pretty good at manufacturing that, but I think they have a real chip on their shoulder that is the result of just a national. I mean, you've got coaches within the league, coaches that Michigan is going to square off against later this season, calling for their head coach to be suspended. You've got ADs calling for it. You've got people on ESPN saying they shouldn't be allowed to compete for a Big Ten championship. They shouldn't be allowed in the college football playoff. And yet week after week, they continue to show up and handle their business on the field. And I know that they say in the press conferences that, you know, we don't listen to that stuff. We don't let that outside noise get to us. I'm going to call a little bit of bullshit on it. I think they do listen to it. I think they've heard plenty of it. And I think it's really changed. As Harbaugh said, it's galvanized this team in a way that we haven't seen.
GOJ, I'm just curious.
Well, before you get to this, just know that this guy's role here.
I know. But it's gonna allow me to make a lot of points and make him look stupid. So I'm gonna jump at the opportunity. Is that cool? Can I do that?
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call. All right, no head coach on the road in arguably the most hostile environment, literally in the country, against the number 1 ranked defense in the country at the time, with everything on the table. Like they had to have that win. Had to have it. Couldn't afford another loss if they wanted anything about their season to remain intact. Oh, by the way, you're taking on the 2-time reigning champions with the biggest target on their back that they've ever had because of what's going on right now. Everything working in their favor to get a dub and couldn't even come close. What the hell do you call that? I know they didn't win by 30. That doesn't mean that you won in a dominant fashion. It was a dominant win every way around it. Like I said, they haven't done this. They haven't done that. They haven't done all these things happened against that Michigan team. The 230 rushing yards, the making Drew Aller look even more like a turd than he has all season. All these things that hadn't happened to Penn State yet happened in that game without a head coach, with everybody hating on that team. Finding out you don't have a damn coach 12 hours before kickoff? Dude, pound sand, dominant. Look it up, find the definition, and tell me that's not what that performance was. I don't care what the final.
You're not going to change. Like. You're not going to change minds. I mean, again, there's a certain segment of people that tune in just to agitate, just to add that to the conversation. And I don't know, man. We've allowed that guy to hang out here and be a part of it, and
fine. But fine. You know, I've said that I used to get in long, all day long arguments on Twitter. I can't handle stupid. I can't handle it. It bothers me. I go back to the quote all the time from George Carlin. Think about the most average person you can find and how stupid that person is, and then realize that half of the people on the planet are dumber than that piece of shit. That's a dumb person, right?
We could kick him out, but we're not going to kick him out because
he can stay.
His presence is both entertaining and it helps us get paid. So we'll let you stay. Thanks for your contribution there, Goj.
He might learn a thing or two. Then he can take that stock image of whoever that soldier is and go find a new one, because I know that ain't him. Anyway, so to look back at the game, Chris, obviously it played out in a weird way. I mean, the runs in the second half, the low-scoring affair. Just to recap, you said 38-17. Yes. I said 31-13. And Trent said 31-17. I mean, so we weren't, like, crazy off. Obviously, the game only ended up being a 9-point win for Michigan, but it was the way that it happened and kind of the way that it played out for it to be 24-15. I mean, you know, James Franklin, again, I thought coached a pretty good game. And then somewhere I can't remember if it was late in the third or early in the fourth, I was like, there he is. He did something like super stupid, like he always does. Like weird times to go for two and just, it's whatever. Yeah. Just overall, when you look like 24-15, obviously we weren't I'm coming to you because you had the biggest discrepancy. Do you think maybe if things were a little normal, maybe if Jim Harbaugh is standing there, maybe if JJ's not tweaked out on his ankle a little bit, I'm not going to take the off the field stuff away because that's been there for a while. But in this specific game, like Jim Harbaugh thought he was coaching. He flew out there to coach that game. And JJ's ankle, whether it's been good or bad over the last couple of weeks, was clearly bothering him at the end of the game. Do you think that would have made any difference and made it look a little bit more like our predictions? Or was this just a slugfest that played out how it did?
Yeah, I mean, I do think some of those things factor in. It's hard to say to what extent. And I think, you know, if Jim Harbaugh is standing there, do things look a little bit different? Do we see, you know, maybe something different offensively called, defensively called? I'm not really sure what the impact is, but I would say that, yeah, certainly, you know, when you board the plane with your head coach and you find out, you know, less than 24 hours before the game, you're not going to be without that guy. Like say whatever you want about Jim Harbaugh. I think his impact on this team is pretty clear, and his presence on the sideline is something that the players very much notice when it's there and notice when it's not there. And that's not to take away anything from the job that Sharon Moore did, because I think he did a phenomenal job. But at the end of the day, yeah, they just, you know, things continued to stack up against them going into their biggest game of the year. And I think some of that may have played a factor in the way that the score ultimately looked. But I also think that part of that is a product of the way the game itself was going. Like, it became pretty apparent that Drew Aller was not going to be able to carry this team on his arm. It became pretty apparent that the Michigan defense was going to be in control of the game. And so I think that dictated, if you factor in what maybe McCarthy is dealing with on his ankle, how do we manage this? Because they were getting to JJ early, and Michigan was having some issues up front, getting a little bit overwhelmed. But Michigan did what good teams do. They made adjustments, and it just so happens the adjustment they made was, we're just going to run it from here on out. And until Penn State proves that they can A, stop us, and B, do something about it when they do stop us, we're not going to change anything. And that's what Michigan did. And so for the idiots out there that don't understand how that equates to being dominant and how that equates to such an impressive performance on the road against the top 10 team with the number one rush defense in the country, there's nothing that we can do to help those folks. But I certainly believe that the factors you mentioned had an impact on the final score. But at the end of the day, it was Michigan got in there. They started to figure out some things pretty quickly about what Penn State could and couldn't do. And then they changed their game plan. I mean, and Jim Harbaugh talked about it before when, we're talking about, how badly, what it was in particular with the non-conference schedule, like how badly do you need to beat these teams? And Jim Harbaugh flat out said, like, look, whether it's 1 or 100, it doesn't matter to me. Like a W is a W. And I think especially in a game like this, when you go on the road and you beat a top 10 opponent, a W is a W. And if you don't believe that, put yourself in James Franklin's shoes this week, who had to fire his offensive coordinator, by the way, as a result of what happened. I mean, you don't want to be on the other side of it. What Michigan did was incredible, impressive performance, but certainly there were factors that played a role in the spread not being as big as I thought it was going to be.
I mean, just think back to like how the players acted and talked during week 4 when Harbaugh came back. I mean, it was noticeable.
Yeah.
Very noticeable that they were ready for their coach to come back. And yeah, at the end of the day, I do wonder how much of a difference that makes on the scoreboard. Like mentally, and especially like JJ as the quarterback, he talked about just looking over there and seeing my coach again and being able to come to the sideline and talk to him and, all the pregame stuff, all that little stuff. I mean, dude, athletes are creatures of habits in ways that, a lot of people are not. And that's a big change, not having your head coach. But I think that's an interesting discussion to have. What does that look like on the scoreboard? Because I think pregame, prep, all the stuff they do leading up to, warm-ups and stretching and throwing, Harbaugh's out there catching every ball and working with his core. Like, that's all gone when he's not coaching. So it's an interesting topic that you wonder, and also, I mean, dude, like, Penn State's a good team. Like, they're really freaking good. I started thinking about this. I was like naming the guys who flashed a lot. They're all NFL guys. They have multiple NFL guys on that defense for sure. All 3 edge rushers who are making an impact. Chop Robinson, Danny Dennis-Sutton, Adisa Isaac, probably all pros. Abdul Carter, the linebacker's a pro. Kalen King, the cornerback, is a pro. I don't know too much about their safeties, but like that's half your defense right there that are going to be playing in the NFL. It's not like this was just tough because, it was on the road and Harbaugh wasn't there and, it was this. It was like, that's a good team. Like, they have a lot of talent. And up until that point, they had only lost to, whether you want to call them number 1 or not, Ohio State. That's it. Yeah. So I think it's because of all the other shit that's going on, you kind of lose the fact that Michigan just beat a damn good team by 2 scores in their own house.
Yeah.
That's noteworthy, even if all this other stuff wasn't even going on. And it is. So yeah, I think it was a special win. I think it was a big deal. And now Michigan's rolling into College Park looking for win number 1,000 against the Terps. Expect that to come pretty easily. But you can't mess with them. You can't sleep on Maryland. I know they're kind of like your Penn State. Just think that offense scored 51 against Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are saying pump the brakes on the the confidence against Maryland, and I said this earlier today when somebody brought it up. This is not a team. They understand what's at stake when they go to College Park. They understand that 1,000 wins is on the table. They understand. I mean, when you listen to Jim Harbaugh talk about that, hell, half of his opening statement today was about what 1,000 wins would mean, and then referenced, the Green Bay Packers as having the most all-time wins, and then a high school team down in Georgia with the most high school wins. Like, they understand the importance of what's on the table against Maryland. And to be honest, like, he what else did he say? He said, we've had this one marked on the calendar for a while to go into week 11, the game 11, and have this on the table. And I think it's a good thing that it is, because absent of the fact that 1,000 wins is on the table, sure, you might be able to look at this and say between Penn State and Ohio State, this is a trap game. This is a game that could get Michigan in trouble. But now you put 1,000 wins on the table, college football history, it certainly makes things interesting.
I love when people say stuff like this. I mean, this is what other fans do. Like, it's fine. You just, you suck. There's literally not a measurable metric that Ohio State is better than Michigan at anything. I didn't go to Michigan. Like, I get it. Like, I'm a Wolverine Walmart, or Walmart Wolverine, whatever you want to say. Proud graduate of Central Michigan, okay? Fine.
Why, yeah,
So
but why are we acknowledging these people? Like they
I
don't
li-
know their names. They don't.
listen, I
they're not
tell you,
coherent.
I can't handle stupid shit.
Then you got to remove.
just-
I mean, there's plenty of people in here that are contributing like good things to the conversation. Like to give these clowns from Ohio State that are in here just to irritate everybody. The platform, like, fuck them, just get them out of here. I mean, I think it's entertaining to a certain extent, but
I can't handle it. I read it and it just my brain needs to just react.
You know what, Brandon? I kind of had this epiphany today as I was listening to, once again, 97 won the ticket. And I asked myself, I'm like, why do I do this? Like, why do I listen to a show like this when I know what I'm going to get? Like, I turn on that 2:00 show knowing exactly what I'm going to get, and they deliver every single time. And then I find myself in the car, pissed off, irritated,
yelling at the windshield,
yelling at nobody, yelling at my wife who's sitting next to me. And I'm like, why do I do this to myself? And so I think, the mature thing for me, what I'm going to try to do is just don't expose myself to it. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of things out there that are ready and willing to agitate you and throw you off. And the more you give it attention, the louder it gets.
Yeah. By the way, we started the show at 6:00 today because Michigan basketball is taking the court right about now. They're actually a 2.5 point underdog against St. John's in New York. So that's tipping off right about now. I'm sure some of you guys will be watching.
Does anybody out there, and I say this with all due respect, but does anybody out there care about basketball right now?
I do, actually, because they've looked pretty.
I'm not asking you.
Well, they've looked better than I thought, and so I'm intrigued. I actually do want to watch it and see how they look, and it is a game that they're technically on paper supposed to lose. So I'm interested to see how they do. And is it crazy that neither program has a head coach right now? It's kind of wild.
It's a wild state of affairs.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, but that's the reason why we came on at 6. We'll wrap this up here shortly, and you can catch the end of the basketball game. So anyway, that's the reason why we did that. So for my 5 Chris, for as weird as that game was, I got 3 of my predictions correct, and that surprises me. Yeah. Number 1, JJ McCarthy will not be sacked. Wrong. He got sacked very early. He was under pressure early a lot, and that's why they decided to move the pocket, and they changed up the formations a little bit, and ultimately why they ran the ball in every single play. So, in fact, I think you agreed with me, I believe, or maybe this might have actually even been your prediction. I was like, oh, I kind of like that, and I used it, and you were all about JJ being able to move around and the O-line doing their thing. And
I was.
I don't think he got sacked. Was it just the one time early? I mean, he obviously didn't get sacked in the second half.
Yeah, I remember. I remember the one very early on. If it was more than one, I can't recall. But they were certainly getting pressure on him. But I know the next one was correct from what I can recall, which was about Drew Aller, I believe. Is that correct?
That's the third one. That's the third one. Okay. Second one,
which I was surprised about. I thought for sure you were going to be wrong on the Drew Aller one.
Second prediction, I went back to the well that I haven't went to in a long time. I just felt good about it. Thought Michigan might try to make a point. We saw what they did against Penn State last year. I thought that Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards would both score a touchdown, and they did. Donovan Edwards had a 22-yard scamper. I think it was on 3rd and long, and it was almost a botched snap, and it was just a perfect play call right to the corner of the end zone, showed the speed. And then Blake was Blake. Had an early short one where he just plowed over 4 guys for a touchdown, and then had the late one that was much longer. And yeah, both running backs found the end zone. Again, cranked out over 200 yards rushing. Looked back to normal for once.
It did, yeah. The rushing game looked impressive. Looked good. It was nice to see it. I mean, anytime, given the way that everything started, when you see Donald get in the end zone, it just, the Don looking like himself. Like a couple of those runs, it was like you can see it. Mm-hmm. And as long as it continues to build for that November 25th matchup, I think we'll all be fine with that.
Yeah, he had a pair of 22-yard runs. One of them was the score. Ran out of his shoe on one.
Shit about what he did against ECU if he right. 150 against the Buckeyes. So
right, no doubt. Okay, third one. This is the Drew Aller prediction. Drew Aller will complete less than 55% of his passes, which he had not done yet this year. I was right about that too. It's 45%. He was not good all day. Looked rattled. Looked scared. Happy feet. He looked best as a damn fullback when they would run him on draws up the middle on the rushing. By the way,
I was getting like PTSD flashbacks from Sean Clifford, the way that he was deceptively fast and would just gash a defense, for like a third and long run because you really didn't account for him. And Drew Aller did that a couple times, and that was probably the only thing about what Penn State did all afternoon that really concerned me a little bit was rushing with Drew Aller, who is, he's kind of like he's got the athleticism of the dude that just entered the transfer portal today from Iowa. Is it Petrie?
Petrus?
Yeah, I kind of put them on the same level.
I'd give him more athleticism than that, but he's big. He just doesn't. He's not changing directions a lot. He's just gonna go forward. And dude, like on his touchdown run, he got contacted on like the 3 and fell in like 7 yards into the end zone. I mean, he's just he's 6'5", 250. He's a load. That's a big dude playing quarterback. And by the way, on that touchdown run, Mason Graham got absolutely tackled right at the point of attack. No call, whatever. I don't really get hung up on holding too much because it happens so often. But he would have made the tackle. He was right there, and the guy just bear hugged him and took him to the ground. Anyway, that was the best Drew Aller looked all day was when he was running the ball on those draws and those QB power plays. But then he fumbled, and he was kind of shook. He was shook when he got pressured throwing the ball. He was shook when he fumbled running the ball. I'm concerned about that dude between the ears because he's obviously got the body and the arm for it, but he did not look comfortable all day. This is the other one I got wrong. Michigan's defense will take it away from Penn State twice. I thought we talked about it. Drew Aller only had one pick coming into the game. I thought he'd throw another one. He didn't.
Well, you had one get overturned late in the game.
That is correct. Which I don't know. They didn't do a good job of showing that in the booth very well. It looked like his arm was under it. Whatever. Not a big deal at this point. But the fumble that I just talked about. So Michigan only had one takeaway. I don't know. That we've talked about turnovers being a tough thing to predict. They were the home team. You'd think that would be, they'd be a little more comfortable there. So I don't know. I was going out on a limb a little bit. And then this one I'm very proud of, Chris, because it's such a specific prediction. And it just seemed like it was kind of a hard thing to come up with, but it actually happened. And Michigan now still can claim this incredible stat. I said that Michigan will score in the third quarter and Penn State will not, and that's exactly what happened. To that point, neither team had given up any points in the third quarter, which is an incredible stat. Now Michigan can take that into Week 11 and Penn State cannot. So I like that one.
I mean, it's crazy to me that they could legitimately go the entire regular season without surrendering a single. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen in College Park. We'll see what happens against Ohio State and Ann Arbor that final week of the regular season. But even then, outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., there's not really much else there to be frightened about if you're the Michigan defense. And so it's just, again, another aspect of how dominant Michigan was. They've done it all season long, and it was, but they did it against East Carolina, and they did it against Rutgers and Bowling Green and yada yada. Well, they just went into Happy Valley and did it against Penn State. But go ahead, continue to move the goalposts, and Michigan will just continue to do whatever you say they can't do. So onward.
That seems to be how it is going. That's it's just such a crazy stat. No points allowed in the third quarter. I mean, it speaks to the adjustments at halftime. I know Michigan, I feel like they've won a lot of the tosses this year too, which allows them to start with the ball in the second half. I want to be interested to look at that. I feel like because I always tweet like Michigan wins the toss, we'll start, on defense. Like I feel like that's happened a lot. I could be wrong on that, but that certainly would help them out in that stat if they're going to get the ball to start and take 6 minutes off the clock or something every other game. But I don't know. Anyway, it's an incredible stat, and now they can still say it, and Penn State no longer can. I think Michigan it was only a field goal. They only got a field goal in the third quarter, but still points.
Yeah, I believe
points
so.
Against the Nittany Lions. So there you go. All right. Chris, as we get ready to transition to our TFG, I'm going to switch over to the soundboard. I hope it doesn't give you immediate echo, but we got to have that for just a second for this segment. You know that. But I did find it interesting that, you look at the stats, 7 of 8, 60 yards, Roman Wilson, no catches. Colston Love needed him to get 25 yards in the game for a bet that I made. He didn't get there. And then you look up and Michigan wins by 2 possessions. It just feels it was different than a lot of Michigan's games in terms of how it played out. And I mean, running the entire second half like that, nobody could have predicted that. but in some ways it was very similar. It's like you just, oh, what are they doing? I don't really like that. Boring. You look up, oh, they win by 2 scores. We used to say, oh, look up and they win by 30. But now they just win by 9, but still 2 possessions on the road, really good team, no head coach. I don't know. But put a bow on it for us, Chris. What you saw down on the field, how it feels to be 10-0 right now, and what Michigan did or didn't do against Penn State before we do TFG.
It feels really good, to be 10-0, for Michigan to still have all of its goals in front of them in terms of winning a Big Ten championship, getting to the college football playoff, and winning the ultimate prize in college football, which is a national championship. But from a personal standpoint, from somebody who covers a team, as a fan of the program, it felt good just to, again, see it on the field, like to be watching football. And now here we are on a Monday talking about football and all the other shit that's really sucked all the oxygen and all the fun out of this season. Like, we got to get back to it. And a lot of times we've come back to this show afterwards and it's been like, well, they beat a shitty team, so how much can we really talk about the game? This was like the first time that we, a legitimate opponent, top 10 ranked opponent, something that you could really hang your hat on and set the tone for the remainder of the year. So for a lot of different reasons, man, it was just an incredible win for this football program. They've had to face a lot of adversity this year, and hats off to them. It was a tremendous job.
There you have it.
This fucking guy.
Well, for this segment today, Chris,
this fucking guy.
There's probably a few. I heard you mention one. Well, I was going to call him out for being bald, and then I forgot who my boy was on the other.
Easy.
I know.
I'm bald.
Well, he goes hard with the horseshoe, though.
Listen, okay, those who grow out the horseshoe, they deserve the ridicule. But for those of us who have just, we understand what it is. We get it. There's nothing there, and you got to get rid of it all. Like what is it? Elaine said on Seinfeld to George, like hanging on to some scrap. Like, you can't do that. You got to let it go.
Just come on over. Just let it go, pal. Let it go.
Just let it go.
I mean,
this fucking guy.
We could probably go Feinbaum every week because ever since he's been being an idiot. I didn't go Feinbaum. I don't know if you did or not.
Such a turd. No, I did not.
Fucking guy.
Do you want to go first, or would you like me to get us started? I'm going to shut the music off, and we'll.
You can get it started.
We'll get the settings turned back over here just in case.
Because we could have the same guy. We might have the same guy.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't talked about it yet. I mean, mine's not obscure or anything. I am going with one Manny Diaz. I'm going with Manny Diaz.
I like
the whole.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, it wasn't funny. Like, okay, I can acknowledge if somebody's going to take a shot or do this or do that. Like, I think it might have been, my dad told me about it. Somebody at game day held up a sign that said Harbaugh stole my other sign. Like, that's funny. Yep. Like, that's pretty good. The stupid little, it was so played. It wasn't funny to watch. It wasn't cool. The message was dumb. And oh, by the way, it didn't work and you got punked in your own house. So for all of those reasons, Manny Diaz is my TFG.
I like it.
After this weekend. And like I said,
very fair.
He just had to feel helpless. And like I said, I know what the drive chart says. I know that Michigan didn't get big play after big play, but for them to just go out there and yell across the field, "We're running it," and to be able to do it with some levels of success, at least enough to move the ball, eat clock, and get a dub, that's got to be a defensive coordinator's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and it certainly gave the players a celebration towards the end of the year. We saw several players pointing at their wrist. Mike Barrett listening for the crowd as half the stadium had already emptied out. So it was, for Manny Diaz to try to put that out there and again have it flipped against him with their stadium half empty and a coordinator about to be fired, and James Franklin to move to 3-17 against. Top 10 opponents. Is that correct? If I want to make sure I have that stat right. Either way, right. He can't win the big game. And I don't know if you saw it, but on the way out, Penn State fans were letting him know. But did you see that exchange with James Franklin on the way out? Yeah, they were not too happy with Mr. Franklin on the way
And then the
out.
big lineman tries to get. Ooh, he starts yelling at him. Yeah. And I'm stealing this from my buddy Dan.
Get the F out.
Yeah, I'm stealing this from my buddy Dan Genro, who may be in the room still or not, but he texted me this. for respect out of Sharon Moore, I didn't type it or put it out there anywhere because I want to give him lots of credit for the job he did as a head coach. But my buddy Dan said, "How about James Franklin getting out coached by a team with no coach?" It's so perfect because he just is a dunce cap so often, and it seems to have trickled down to his coordinators. One who is now unemployed, and the other who wrote a check that he could not cash. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've seen a lot of people already mention it in the comments, and it's, it should come as no surprise that my TFG of the week is one Mr. Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner.
Fair.
I mean, look, it doesn't matter what you think about Michigan, what you think about what they did, or how you feel they should be punished because of it. The way that the Big Ten commissioner has handled this from start to finish has been an absolute joke, a disgrace, an embarrassment to the conference. And today, for it to be confirmed that Jim Harbaugh, Ward Manuel, and this Michigan football team found out via social media that the Big Ten had issued a suspension while they're in the air on their way to Penn State is just further evidence that I don't know that this guy is cut out for this job. And I don't know what it means for the relationship between Michigan and the Big Ten Conference moving forward. I know that we have seen, rumor out there that Michigan's possibly looking at other conferences and what is Michigan going to do in the future? All I will say is that was some coward shit. Could not even call Jim Harbaugh. Could not even call Ward Manuel. Couldn't have a conversation man to man. Instead, somehow it gets leaked to ESPN. Who's on 24-hour Harbaugh watch, suspension watch, what's going to happen, and then they got to find out on social media. So Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten, coward, clown move. That's about all I can say, man. That just the way that this has been handled has been an absolute disgrace. And again, I don't care where you stand on this. You want them to throw the book at Michigan? Fine. There isn't a single person that can go to stand to the podium and pound their fists and say, the Big Ten handled this correctly. Universally, it's accepted that the Big Ten fumbled this big time. And now, just so that we're clear, if you're a head coach of a football program and there's an investigation surrounding your program, your head coach will be suspended. That's the standard now.
Because of the precedent this has set.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
before you find out if anything actually happened.
Doesn't matter.
That's going to be the new standard.
And now, just so we're clear, if a team is motivated enough, you can go out and hire a PI firm to investigate your rival. You can nudge the NCAA into doing an investigation, and now the Big Ten Conference is going to be forced to suspend your head coach before that's come to a resolution. So phenomenal job, Tony Petitti. You have done just a slow clap, bang up job the way you've handled this from start to finish.
The article I put up today, Harbaugh said, flat out, he said, I learned about in a civics class 40 years ago in high school that people are innocent until proven guilty. I would like that opportunity. I mean, dude, he didn't get it. It's crazy.
Regardless of the outrage and what athletic directors were saying and what other coaches around the league were saying, the best thing he could have done would have been to say there is an ongoing NCAA investigation. And until that investigation is complete, we are not going to act. Boom, end of story, end of speculation. But instead, you let people at ESPN dictate your move. You let other athletic directors dictate your move. You let other head coaches dictate your move. You let pressure from all around the country dictate your move, which essentially was to act prematurely before all the evidence was even presented. And even in the Big Ten statement, they said flat out, we don't yet know if Harbaugh was connected, had any knowledge. We don't have any evidence of that, but screw it. We're going to suspend him anyway. So again, just wait till it happens to your team. Wait till somebody is motivated enough to dig up some dirt on your team. We'll see how well you handle it. Michigan Wolverines are sure handling it pretty well.
Yeah, that's a mess.
And the other thing I want to say beforehand, and maybe this is this plays into what Chris has said. I haven't even read this question. Maybe go ahead and read this because I think it goes in line with what I'm about to say.
So, Chris, thank you, man. The emotional aspect displayed after, Sharon Moore crying and dropping some F-bombs on national TV, talking directly into the camera at Coach Harbaugh.
Love you, man.
Yeah, and Harbaugh today said, he almost got emotional. It looked like talking about it today. But all the Michigan and the fans, including Chris, does this make you love Michigan more? Other people making fun of them, but he loves it. Should that be the case? Are you a big-time homer? I think it's case by case. I mean, some people are really, really emotional and others are not. I don't think it should matter. I don't think it should. One part I would say, you said everyone seems to make fun of you or Sharon. Fuck them. Yeah. I mean, who cares? Like, love your team however you want. I don't think everybody's going to get on the microphone and cry. I don't think everybody out there is going to get emotional watching Sharon Moore go through that. But if you do, you do. I mean, not everybody handles things the same way, but I don't think it has anything to do with being a homer. I think there was a lot building up to that game if you remove everything else. Like, dude, we talked about this game in August, July. Like, circle that one. That's when we're going to know it's going to be huge. Both teams could be undefeated, blah, blah. I mean, like, all those things were on the table, and then you dump on all of this stuff that's been going on for a month. No Harbaugh. Sharon finding out he's coaching, 12 hours before kickoff, essentially. It was an emotional moment, and clearly it was for Sharon. And Jim Harbaugh had no voice. He hasn't been hoarse after a game he's been at all year, but he was hoarse after this one, and he tried to play it off and say he was sick, but the players outed him because they said, we saw him before the game and he was fine, and then after the game he was hoarse. Both players that
you should know how quickly a virus can come on, Brandon. If anybody should know, it's you.
That's true. That is true, but it was pretty clear that everybody involved was fired up, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Display it however you want.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised because I didn't see it live, obviously, after the game. I was scrambling to get, the different photos of what was happening down on the field, but then I watched the playback, and I was a little bit surprised. But then you think about it, like, everything that's been thrown at this Michigan team, and you're coaching alongside Jim Harbaugh, and you guys are putting in the work in the offseason, and you deal with the 3-game suspension at the beginning of the year. You continue to win. You get to the biggest game of the season. There's tremendous amount of pressure and scrutiny, and the spotlight is on this program. And then in the 11th hour, it's all of a sudden, Sharon Moore, you're up. This is your baby now.
And guess what?
If he loses that football game as acting head coach, that's something that's going to weigh on him. And I think what you saw was there were a number of different ways he could have handled that interview after the game, and you just happened to see it come out that way. So I think if you're a Michigan fan, the same way that we busted Ryan Day's balls for the way he went after Lou Holtz and his screaming, like a clown after they beat Notre Dame, if you're in that situation, Ohio State fans and players loved it. Everybody on the outside might have looked at it and been like, fuck is this dude's problem? I know that's how I felt when I was watching Ryan Day, but I think he's a clown anyway. But when it came to Sharon Moore specifically, I loved it as a Michigan fan. Somebody who cares this much about this football program, this group of players. Sharon Moore is one of the longest tenured coaches on this staff. He has been with this program for a while through the ups and the downs. And, to see him have all this put on his plate, coaching the offensive line, offensive coordinator, now you're acting head coach, going to Happy Valley, get a big W the way they did. I absolutely loved it, man. I love Sharon Moore. I know he's going to be a head coach. Harbaugh reiterated that today. Mm-hmm. I just, I talk about how much I love Ben Herbert and how much I think he means to this program overall. I am not looking forward to the day that Sharon Moore gets introduced as a head coach elsewhere, because I would love for him to stay in Ann Arbor forever.
Harbaugh said all 10 of my assistants could be head coaches, and 4 of them probably will be next year, and Sharon's one of them. I mean, that's a fact. To your point,
shadowing the fact that he was gonna retire and go to the NFL.
Well, Sharon Moore, new head coach at Michigan, wouldn't hate it. Wouldn't hate it. To your point, it's behind us now, so you can say the if. But if they had lost that game, and that's Sharon Moore, talk about a devastating outcome for him to have to deal with personally. And on the flip side, from a completely practical standpoint, Jim Harbaugh has now let him be the head coach for 2 games. And if Jim Harbaugh misses The final two, he's going to be the head coach for those as well. He already said that. Harbaugh might not single-handedly, but might be almost directly responsible for getting Sharon Moore like a $40 million contract.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a massive deal.
Kind of in the way that like Harbaugh's like kind of the Kenneth Walker to Mel Tucker almost. You know what I mean? In a way, he's going to help Sharon Moore get paid big time. But again, that's going to be a sad day if and when that happens.
So for one season, Jim Harbaugh is going to directly affect Sharon Moore's future in a massive way financially before going to the NFL, just like Kenneth Walker. That's what you're saying, right? I got you. No, it's there's just so much from a personal level. If you're Sharon Moore, I mean, dude, that was like the weight before the game, and then the weight lifted after the game, and then the realization that what it all could mean for him in another 3 months. It's a lot, man.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a young dude with a family. I mean, there's so much riding on that dude, like crazy.
And I saw somebody bring it up in the comments here. I do want to point it out. Yeah, Ben Herbert, amazing guy to have as part of your program. Also took what is might be, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt it's the best photograph ever taken of Blake Corum. It might be like one of the most symbolic like football pictures I've ever seen in my life. And I find myself, Brandon, a little bit conflicted on that because as somebody who like invests thousands of dollars into camera equipment and hours of editing and trying to get that perfect shot, here comes Ben Herbert, just strength and conditioning coach extraordinaire, snaps this photo of Blake Corum, and it's honestly, it's one of the most beautiful photos I've ever seen. I think it just embodies what toughness is, what football is, all in one photo. I mean, the damn thing looks like it could be on the cover of like Time magazine. I mean, it's that kind of photo. And as a photographer, like I said, I found myself a little conflicted because that's the type of shit you work for all the time.
I felt pretty good about that one when I took it back in the day of old Bench Mason. But, dude, you add in that it's Corum, the Penn State game.
I thought that's the one you were going to show, Brandon.
The blood. He had to have done it with his phone, right? He's not out there with a camera.
I mean, I don't think he's got. Yeah, I don't think that's a professional camera situation. But see that you have access to the players, though. Like you can walk up to Blake, and you can say, "Hey, stand still. I'm going to snap this." And
yeah.
Just an incredible photo.
So back to your point from a little bit ago, Chris. Just talking about how this was handled by Petitti. An even worse precedent is that teams can now bypass the Big Ten and the NCAA and leak it to dinks like Thamel and Dellinger and Wetzel, and Wetzel was actually on like a more objective side, but still they were finding stuff out before the people in the investigation. Like for Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel and the players to find out on social media while they're flying is insane. You said something earlier about like wherever you fall on this, if you want to throw the book at Michigan, fine. They didn't. They didn't even talk to Michigan. That's insane. Like that should never go that way. And yeah, it does. It may have created a lot of dangerous precedents that we've never seen before, and it's not good. It's not a good path to follow. Anyway, God,
are we still on the TFG segment?
Yeah, we're gonna have to pack it in. There's no way we can do burning questions at this point.
No burning questions.
We're gonna do it Wednesday. We'll do it Wednesday. We've got fan led. It's gonna be a question day. I actually have 4 now, but whatever. I was kind of putting them together as we were going. But yeah, I mean, you just leave that game and let me ask you this first. I don't want to doubt. Do you think it really went down just how Harbaugh said? That he just like someone over his shoulder showed him a phone and like you're suspended and whoop, that was it. Do you think that's how it went? Really? Okay. I found myself wondering that. I liked hearing that Ward was pissed and was fired up about it and got off the plane in a rage.
There's been a bit of a change.
It felt different.
Yeah, it certainly felt different. I mean, we were talking about this not too long ago. Like, would Ward Manuel even be athletic director at Michigan? Once all the dust settled from all of this, and it sure sounds like he might not have been the most vocal person out in the media and publicly, but Jim Harbaugh singled him out today. in terms of, how angry he was. He also singled him out and thanking him for his support through all of this stuff in his opening statement. And so, again, whatever your thoughts are on Ward Manuel, we've talked a lot about how it seems like he's missing in action a lot of the time. It was, I thought it was refreshing, and it was nice to hear Jim Harbaugh come out and say this guy's been in the corner. I think, to use his exact phrase, he said Ward's been 10 toes down the entire time. So, I mean, that's a pretty strong endorsement from your head coach for a lot of people who, John U. Bacon, specifically, notable guy who said, that's a frosty relationship, not a strong relationship. It's weird how sometimes things like this can galvanize even people that don't have a strong relationship. And I do think that Harbaugh touched on it a little bit today. All of this stuff that's happened, man, like this team is this is a dangerous team. I mean, I know, look, Georgia's not going to say they're afraid to play Michigan. All these top tier teams aren't going to say that, but this is not a team you want to play right now. And I think that all the stuff that's happened, if Michigan has any shot at winning the national championship, I don't think it's hurt their chances. If anything, I think it's strengthened their chances.
Yeah, it's been wild, and just a testament to how well they've handled everything. I mean, we talk a lot about when you hear the culture in the locker room and galvanized and unity and brotherhood, like all these cliche words that get thrown around. You wonder sometimes if it's just coach speak or like that's kind of what they have to say. I believe it about this team more than any team I've ever believed it about. And that, that goes back to, 2 seasons ago when Aiden Hutchinson was at Big Ten Media Days, and we're like, well, let's see it then. And then they showed it. And then last year was even better. And this year, even better. I mean, like, even with all this stuff going on, this is a better team. And it's pretty incredible. It does speak to, what Jim Harbaugh has been able to build, just how it all looks, the leadership on the team. And by the way, again, Harbaugh continuing to double down. He used the word innocence a couple times today at his press conference. And the dude could not be more unbothered. He's referencing Judge Judy. He's referencing Tom Cruise. He's talking about chickens. He's talking about eating an apple so he can feel better. I mean,
what he also did?
Care less.
He also, and I might do something with this with the video. I'm not sure how, but his take on, he made sure he prefaced what he was about to say with like, my wife doesn't like it when I talk about her here in public, but the way that he described like getting into an argument with your wife and the way he handles his emotions, I just thought was absolutely hilarious. And we'll do something with it, and we'll put something out. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy who certainly isn't acting or talking like he was guilty or responsible or a part of anything that was going on. Now you can obviously levy some criticism and say, look, it's your program. You're supposed to know what's going on. But I think all signs point to Connor Stalions really acting on his own. And one of those little things, that just, you're not going to see it really reported out there, but you walk into Schembechler Hall, and there's this giant mural that's been there for, since last season. And, ever since all of this started to happen and the news broke of the NCAA investigation, you would go in there and you look at that mural, and it's not open to the public. So a lot of people probably haven't even seen it, but it's when they're doing their turnover celebration, and front and center in this, I don't know, what is it, 10 feet tall by 8 feet wide mural is one Connor Stalions prominently in the center of the picture. That mural today is gone, no longer. So I think, it's a small, it's a small gesture. It's not a big deal, but I think one of the things that's really annoyed me over the last couple of weeks is this sort of, I don't know, and it's a small segment of the fan base, but this wanting to make Connor Stalions into some sort of hero. Like, this guy single-handedly almost completely fucked the Michigan football program and what should be an incredible season. So as far as I'm concerned, the dude is not a hero. I don't think we should be celebrating what he did. It certainly sounds like he was guilty of breaking some rules. He's now cost Jim Harbaugh at least one game, could cost him, the remainder of the regular season. If Harbaugh was not aware of it, I just think at the end of the day, when you listen to Jim Harbaugh speak, he certainly talks like a man who is innocent, knows he's innocent. And if there's a punishment to come for something that happened in his program that he wasn't aware of, he's willing to accept it. but he wants to be given the same right that everybody else is given, which is to go through due process. Let the process run its course. And if the findings indicate that there should be some sort of penalty, then he'll deal with that then. And the fact that he's going to go to court on Friday and might have the opportunity to speak and represent himself. I know they've got great lawyers there, but I'm sure he's going to have a thing or two that he wants to say. I mean, shit, there's a chance Jim Harbaugh standing on the sideline in College Park. I mean, that is, again, it just speaks to how ridiculous and unpredictable this entire season has become. And I can't think of a better way for it to end, Brandon, than Jim Harbaugh in Indianapolis being handed the Big Ten championship trophy by one Mr. Tony Petitti. What an incredible photograph that's going to make for. And then you go on your run to a national championship.
Dude, he might just I don't even know, body slam him.
You remember when Connor Cook ripped the who was it? Was it the Big Ten championship trophy? Ripped it out of
Archie Griffin.
Archie Griffin. I just walked up, ripped it out of his hand, didn't even look at him. Might get one of those.
Oh, I was gonna say earlier, you mentioned Ryan Day yelling and Ohio State fan. I did want to point out, Sharon Moore cried, super emotional, dropped a couple F-bombs. Did not pick a fight with a 90-year-old.
That's true.
Key. That's key. That's key.
True.
But yeah, no.
I mean, it would have been totally different if we would have been sobbing and been like, "Fuck you, Tony Petitti and Manny Diaz." You know what I mean? Like he just talked about how much he loved his guys, and that was what it was. So
a little different. Didn't even say anything about any of the outside noise. And
I'd like to know where Joe Paterno's at right now.
Yeah.
Well. We know where.
Yikes! Wow,
it's a good way to end it.
A way to end the show there. Guys, I'd like to talk to you about Christ. No, yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks, and that game was. It kind of feels like a rest stop, at least.
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, certainly Friday's coming. But I don't think anything's going to happen between now and then. Jim Harbaugh's going to have his day. He wants to yell at a jury or rule like Judge Judy. He said
he is determined to have his day in court, and he will take full advantage. God, I would love to be. Wait, can't the public go? I was going to say, aren't those open to the public? I'm going to have to do a little bit of investigating. Maybe I can get some footage of Jim Harbaugh representing himself on Friday.
Hilarious. Oh, I was also thinking that Tony Petitti will probably hand the Big Ten championship trophy to Pete Thamel to take up to Harbaugh.
Here you go, sir.
Yeah, he'll walk it up there for him. All right, guys, we'll be back on Wednesday night for Fan-Led Wednesday, and we will have our burning questions ready to roll. Thank you for adjusting to our schedule tonight. Still had a really good turnout, so we always appreciate that. So Wednesday night, we'll be back.